Hello, you beautiful people. This is Computer Science for Everyone. And we're going to start our third chapter, which is about computer programming. Well, if you remember, we started from computational thinking, the way that you can think computationally, skills that lead you to solve complex problems. And the goal, the ultimate goal, was designing an algorithm. And many times I told you that computational thinking is different than computer programming. Then in the second chapters, I gave you some example of devising an algorithm like search and sort, and I talk about building blocks like sequencing, iteration, and selection. Today, we're going to start our journey into coding itself. I want to make you a little bit familiar with programming and how we turn that algorithm into something that can work. Well, let's look at the first question. What is programming? Well, programming is writing computer code to create a program to solve a problem. Another way of thinking is to implement the algorithm that you already have designed. Remember, we use flowchart and pseudocode to show and present an algorithm. But now we're in the position, in the state that we want to use some actual working example, some language that can turn that flowchart or pseudocode in something the computer can understand and can do the job. And I have to tell you that, remember that algorithm should be very, very determined, should be very clean, because computer exactly follow instructions that you pass. So when it comes to coding, we have same situations. Our program should be very clean, very clear, and no ambiguity at all. So this is number one. Let's go for the next question. What is a programming language actually? So I can tell you that it's this kind of artificial language that we made up ourselves, we human, to follow it, to give it to computers. It has some sort of structures. It has similarity to human language because we can understand in a better way, but it follows some structures, some approaches that through that one, we can give our solution to computers. Let me show you one example or some pictures and see how it's going to work. Look at here. Imagine if you turn on your computers and you go somewhere like Python, which is one of the programming language, and just type hello world. They're not going to work at all because the computer doesn't understand the hello world. Hello world is just an English sentence. And it doesn't matter if you change it to other languages. For example, if you want to use French language and say bonjour tout le monde, it's not going to work at all. It doesn't matter which one you want to use. As long as you don't follow the language that computer understand, you're not going to get anything out of this. So, but if you look at the last line, there is something says print, open parenthesis, single quote, hello world, single quote, and close parenthesis. If you do this, then Python programming language or computer understand it because, oh, I know what is this. I know what the meaning of the print. Technically, print says, get this hello world and show it on a screen. So that's what print does. This is a simple example of language, a programming language. There are some rules and regulations, verbs you have to follow and turn your idea into that direction. That is programming language. We're going to get familiar with many of them. I can give you some examples. For example, Java, C, C++, C#, Ruby, Python, JavaScript. There are many programming languages out there, and they can do really amazing stuff with you. But if you ask me, which one is good for a person that want to learn a little bit, not be specifically a programmer, I'm going to pick up Python because it's easy. It's very English. Everybody can understand it. Complexity is really low. And that's why I choose for this course to get you familiar with how we use a programming language to turn an algorithm to a solution that computer can understand and can apply. Let's go for the next question. So what is a program? So we talk about programming language, and now what is a program? So look at here, a program is collection of some blocks, we call them statements. Look at human writing. When you write an essay, what is an essay? It's a collection of sentences and verbs that you connect them together and you follow a grammar of the language that you are using, maybe English, maybe Spanish, maybe Chinese. And then you make sure that you're following the grammar, text is meaningful and everything is correct. But you mix all those kind of verbs and sentences to build an essay, to write an essay. In computer also, we have something we call it the statements, expressions, that we combine all these things together to write a code. For example, remember from that example, I wrote print hello world. That print is actually one sample of a statement. Let me show you another code that we're going to talk about it today later. So look at this code and look at the all the orange terms. There are statements actually, input, int, print, else, if. And mixing these stuffs with some operators and input and strings and variables and identifier led you to write your code. So in similarity, in a way that I can maybe help you to understand, these statements are like verbs and sentences. You combine them and mix them and you write a code. We will talk more about different statements in Python. And you will find similarity when you look at other programming languages because they all follow same concept. Well, I think now I can give you an example. It's time to talk about a good example. Example is very simple. Let's say that we're running a simple application, an algorithm, to check your age. If you're less than 15 years old, we're going to give you free cinema ticket. If you're above 15, then you have to pay, right? So I'm going to just go through all the steps we have learned together. First, we're going to draw a flowchart, and then after that, we're going to see pseudocode, and finally, we're going to see a code written in Python programming language. So I will explain in a nice way. I try to do my best, then you get the point and understand it. Let us start and go through first flowchart. So look at the flowchart. First is a start, and then we're going to get an input. Remember the parallelogram designed for input and output. How old are you? Then we have a decision making selection. Is age is less than 15? If yes, we output you're eligible for a discount. Okay. If no, you're not eligible for a discount, and then a stop. Okay, it's very simple, a simple code, simple algorithm. Let's take a look again in flowchart. So start, input how old are you, and a decision, 2 branches, yes, no. And then if yes, you're going to get a discount. If no, no, you're not eligible at all. Now we're going to convert this to a pseudocode. So now look at my pseudocode. Output, how old are you? Input, user inputs their age. A store, the user's input in the age variable. So this is the age variable, refers to what user input. We use store command. If age is less than 15, then output, you are eligible for a discount. Else, output, you're not eligible for a discount. So this is very similar to what we discussed in our flowchart. So you can pause video and you can compare these two together. Output, input, store, checking, and then output, and else, and again output. Now, this is what we've done before. If you remember, we talked about the bus ticket and different examples. Now, I'm going to use Python programming language to convert the pseudocode into actual programming. And then you will see that it's not that much difficult because Python is really nice, is in a way that doesn't have that much of distance from what you expect to see as a pseudocode. It's very similar to pseudocode. That's why many lecturers and many people teaching codings, they use Python from the first day as pseudocode actually. So let's look at the code. Okay, now look at the first 3 lines, those lines that we had here, the output, input, and a store. Look at these three lines. So it's now wrapped into one line. Input, and when you write and you give this how old are you, we call it a string. You see is wrapped between 2 delimiters, double quotation. So how old are you? We give it to input. What input does, show this on the screen and wait for user to key in something. And typically what we receive is in a string. We have to convert it to integer. So don't get confused. I'll talk about it later. But because I have to write a real code, so we need this int. And then this is written in the Python version 3. And then the amount is in age, variable age. So technically, these 3 lines of code, these 3 lines of pseudocode, converted to this line. And then in the next line, what I'm doing is I say if age is less than 15, so, and look at the colon, but in pseudocode, we had then, right? And everything is uppercase. But you can see Python language, you don't need to do that. You can just write lowercase. You have to write lowercase. Sort of case sensitivity is important in Python. So print, this is like an output. And you have open parentheses, you're eligible for a discount, else you're not eligible for a discount. It's very, very important. You see the singularity in the connection between flowchart, pseudocode, and the actual code. This is the actual code. And look at the colon. It's very important. And if you save it and run it, then you will get a lot of interesting result out of it. So that was our discussion, first discussion about introduction to programming. We're going to talk more, and also in future videos, I'll explain and present to you guys an online environment that you can write your Python code, which is designed by QDCode, and they can try. And that's really fun because you can see how really now we're solving actual world problem by coding. This is my plan, that you can engage these stuff in your daily meetings, discussions, decision planning, and all these kind of things that you're going to do now and in the future. So that's all, everybody. Have fun, and try to pause the videos and then look at the codes and compare them all. We will talk more about programming.